So guys, one last area of the toolbar is called the modify area, and that's below draw tools. Under this area, you have crop tool, you have the recompose tool, you have the, I believe that's the content aware move tool, and the straighten tool. Okay. And in terms of these tools and what they do, we'll go through them really quickly because there's not much going on here. There's some useful stuff, but not a terribly huge amount. So crop is pretty straightforward. You guys know what to do here. You've done this already. For something like this, maybe you want just half the city, you decide, but it would crop out the other half. So whatever I select is what I end up with. On your assignments and projects, you guys have already been cropping. Maybe I want that side of the city. Maybe I want less of this and more of that. Right? So it goes either way. So I'll just cancel that out. The other idea, or the other thing to note, I should say, under crop is that you can have no restriction, or you can actually use photo ratio so that you've cropped the photo size. You have different inch sizes here for different framing options. So here's where you would choose, when you crop, here's where you would choose the size of image you want to produce. And if you were producing something to go to Staples with in print, it would produce this size. So 8x10 photo, 5x7, 4x6, 16x9, use photo ratio or no restriction. The other thing is that crop, the tool itself will suggest things. So here's a crop suggestion. Here's another one. And it brings you through different suggestions of things you should crop or could crop. Okay, the other one is to toggle your grid overlay. You can have a really intense one. And again, you grab those handles and move them around. It doesn't affect your picture, so don't worry about grabbing from here. Grab from the sides, it's okay. It doesn't flatten your image or anything when you're using the grid. It's just where you want your grid to show up. So you can toggle a light grid or you can toggle no grid at all, and your crop tool just becomes transparent. Okay? So that said, that is the crop tool. Another tool under crop is the cookie cutter tool. We'll click on that one. The idea here is I can go back and choose those shapes, any kind of shape I wanted. And let's say it's a nice scene I wanted to portray here. Maybe I could use this. When I crop, I'm creating a frame around something, okay? Or just the outline, just whatever is in that piece of shape that I give you a better example. That's not a good one. I'll give you a hard example. So maybe this is where you live. I give you a hard example, you're now cropping out everything else but that shape. And so on and so on and so on. So maybe it's an arrow, right? And that can be moved to get different parts of the image. So you can move that around until you make the selection. Get the idea? So you can do that with faces, with anything. You can crop with shapes. And I believe under shapes we can add to default, but there's 100 million shapes in here. So face, anything here, foliage, trees. I could do something like a tree, right? Anything. So just have a look, go through all of this and check it out. Talk bubbles even. You get the idea. Lastly, this is called a perspective crop. So when I do this crop, it's kind of like a skew almost. When I move this around, I start to shift what I'm cropping. Right? I can pull it in, I can pull it up, and really get a wonky looking picture. And when I'm done, I've crossed over, so I can't do that way. But anyway, the idea is when I'm done, I've changed the perspective of the picture. So there you go. And that's the crop tool. So variations, if you think of graphic imaging or advertising or marketing, stuff like this gets very useful. As you can imagine, you can do limitless stuff. Another tool, I'm just going to undo this so that I can get back to it. Another tool is the Recompose tool. And I can bring that down and make that smaller. It keeps this frame the size. It's almost like a image resize kind of concept. So I can bring that down or up with this tool. And I can apply the transformation. And now I've got to, whoops, don't want to touch that. Undo that. So threshold, I can change threshold. I can play with size. I can erase highlights marked for protection. I can mark aspects of it for removal. You name it. So if I want to, mark this for removal and go back and do my recompose, the idea is that I can once I approve it, right? I've gotten rid of a bunch of stuff that will all be gone. So it lets you sort of edit at your whim here. Recompose tool. Another tool in this area is the content aware move tool. So if I really like this building and I want to select it, I can move that content anywhere I want. I can right click or I can put it there. I can copy it. I can manipulate it, right? I can come back and take another piece. But the idea is to move the content, which it moved. And it changed the perspective here, right? So anyway, choose content, move it, whatever you wish. Content aware move tool. I can subtract, I can add from that selection. So let me give you a better selection so we can do it a little differently. Let me see, I would do content aware move tool. Let's just do this. Whoops. Just to give you a better understanding of how this works. Say okay. I've moved that over there. I mean, for whatever reason, that might be very useful for you in different ways. You'd know if you know how to use that tool, you'd kind of have an idea, especially in layers assignments and stuff where you might want to move content. It doesn't take away over here. It just copies and moves a piece. So another one to consider in this area is the straighten tool. So if you had a crooked image, it would straighten it. If I'm taking a straight image and applying this, I would probably make it crooked, which I just did. So it's going to read that the image is crooked. It's going to straighten it for you. Remove background and original size are your options here to play with. So autofill edges, etc., etc. So play around with those and have a look. Those are the perspective crop, right? The crop, cookie cutter crop, the recompose, the content aware move tool, and the straighten tool. The last area is just color. Down here, this is the very last area of the toolbar. You have foreground and background colors set. You can do color picker here. You can do current layer, all layers. The idea here, though, is if I was to, I can choose any color and any spectrum here. So as you can see, if I slide this up and down, I get all kinds of variations. And then within this, I get all kinds of variations. So I can type the color in manually here if I'm looking for it, and so on and so forth. Okay, so only web colors, depending on what I'm doing, right? Choosing colors up here. Only web colors would be if something I was going to publish. I want it to be able to be seen on different websites. I want to make sure I'm using colors that are existing. Choosing colors, you can learn more about them here. The idea is I'm on the eyedropper tool now, which is automatically selected for me to choose my color. And it places the color I've chosen into the color box. So when I flip that over, now I've got the color I just chose. And again, I'm coming out here back to a paintbrush sort of thing. There's the brush I selected from an earlier tutorial, but just the idea that I've selected that color. Opacity's kind of low. Let me turn it up so you can see. Selected that color. And that's it. Just color selection, swapping them back and forth with those little arrows, or reverting to my default foreground and background. And I can switch those anytime just by clicking on them. And that is color and modify.